got to do. Walk around the building with that little thing wiggling around to give it enough three-dimensional reference points to know exactly where it is. And that has a lot of really interesting applications. We're now adding thermal sensing to that because thermal sensing is actually really tricky to do, and it's very hard to get precise thermal measurements from a reflected surface unless you know exactly the angle of reflection. Well, because we're doing laser mapping of everything, we do know precisely the reflection of every laser beam, so we can actually calculate precise temperatures, not just temperature gradients and things, and that's starting to become a very valuable addition to that sort of thing. So they are all things that drive more and more bandwidth. They are all things that are in the scientific domain, and they're all things that are really interesting to think about what you might be able to use them for. We've been going through that process of developing those technologies and starting to commercialise some of them, and some of them are still open to be commercialised. And we think that they are all things that we'll see in more and more common usage over the next few years. So I guess one of the things that I'd like to highlight, and Tasmania is the example, Sense-T as a project would never have happened if it wasn't for the NBN deployment. And many of those sensor networks don't need a lot of bandwidth, but what they need is ubiquity. They need easy access to a network out on the farm, out in the river estuary, wherever. The ubiquity of the NBN is a really key enabler. That investment came directly from the fact that the vision was you needed ubiquity to deliver all that capability, so let's leverage the NBN to do it. And that's become a very substantial investment. And some of these other ones will also find investments because of the kind of underpinning network infrastructure we will have that can actually support the amount of traffic that some of these things will generate into remote mine sites or even central hospitals. We could talk about all of those implications endlessly. The key is lots and lots and lots of new and interesting business models derived from science that will end up in business and in consumer environments in the not too distant future. So thank you, and I guess if there are any questions, there is a bit of time for that, but I've probably spoken right through the whole lot of stuff.
Thank you, Geoff. I'd like to spend a few days at CSIRO. Actually, I think some of the stuff you do is really fascinating. I've got one great question here, and of course we've got Mudgee and Burke tuned in remotely, and we've got one question that's coming from Mudgee. And the question was, how can we balance the benefits of auctioning services internationally against supporting local, regional businesses? So it's a tricky one.
Yeah, it is a tricky one, and look, CSIRO is a very, very interesting and diverse and complex organisation. There are incredibly wide-ranging choices in terms of business commercialisation models. In fact, my guess is if you can dream up a model, we've already got an example somewhere in the organisation. That in its own right is a wonderful thing. We can be incredibly flexible. What we are trying to do in many of these cases is commercialise things. Remember, the mandate of an organisation like CSIRO, which is a good portion of it's government funded, Australian government funded, is about doing things that are for the benefit of Australians. So it is part of our mandate, and the mandate is just as important in that domain as it is about making money. So when we commercialise something, we look at it from that perspective. And more often than not, what we're trying to do is find local organisations who can take the intellectual property, use it domestically and internationally, because that's where the real benefit can come. If you think about the digital economy and the productivity gains you can get from the digital economy, one of the things you might notice is if we get productivity gain, you create another person out of a job. The only way we get this balance right is if we actually export those services skills to other markets. So instead of that 5 technology jobs replacing those 20 low-tech jobs, it now has to grow into 20 technology jobs being exporting the capability of those services. And that's where we're looking all the time. That's the sweet spot for us.
Great, thanks. We've got time, we're just going to get to afternoon tea, so I'll just take one question from the audience. Any questions there in the audience? No? Okay, right, yeah. Thanks, Geoff. You've done a great job. You've done 2 talks, 2 for the price of 1. Well done. Right, thanks, Geoff. So afternoon tea now. We'll come back at 3:35. We're going to start at 3:35 sharp. And I've had a request for more jokes from the MC. So I'll just tell you a quick dad joke. The bear walked into a bar. The barman said, "What would you like?" The bear said, "I'd like a rum and Coke, thanks." The barman said, "Why the big paws?" "Well, I don't know. I was born with them, I suppose." There you go. You can take that to afternoon tea, and you can beat up on Luke Cameron for asking for more jokes from the MC. See you at 3:35.